Ladies and gentlemen, K-Kim here. Welcome to the daily update. Hope you guys had a good day trading today. Market was down. I think it gapped down 1% on the S&P here, right at open, but it climbed back up, and so now market is pretty much flat, 0.1% negative for the day. I think Nasdaq is down about 0.6%. I think at some point Nasdaq was down like 2.5% or something like that. We did see a green day on the small caps, a little over 1%. The banks are green, about 0.5% or something like that. So pretty much it was a red day throughout the day, or pretty much red day right at open. Market climbed back up, and we pretty much closed the day with flat performance relative to where it closed yesterday. So let's talk about that. Let's try to figure out, today's Thursday, right? So we have one more day of trading this week, which is tomorrow, and tomorrow's Friday. So let's try to figure out what we can expect going into tomorrow, right? So we did have that 1% gap down, and we held there. We continued on the second hour. Third hour, pulled back a little bit. Fourth hour continued, stayed flat on the fifth, but continued on the sixth hour. So we pretty much marched higher little by little all throughout the day. And what happened with that is that we filled this gap. You can see right there. That's where the market closed yesterday. We gapped down 1% and spend the entire day today to get up there to fill that gap. And no longer, the price was not able to move any higher than the gap fill area. Let me just, with today's move and pretty much what we've seen in the last several days, I'm going to explain to you why tracking gaps are, extremely important, especially if you're trying to figure out the short-term movement of this market. And you can see this was pretty much the Monday's price action. That's the Tuesday. This is Wednesday, and this is Thursday, right? Those gaps, those supports were already predefined, right? On Monday, right? The Monday into Tuesday, you can see this level here. This was what? That gap area. So what happens is a lot of times a gap, the area act as support and the gap fill area act as. So that's a gap area because that's where it gapped up. That's the gap fill area because that's where gap started and then when it got up here, right? Do you understand? So that's a gap, that first level of the gap, and there's a gap fill area, right? So that support was already defined. Once we saw the price start to move lower, we knew that this is where we're going to see potentially the market slowing down at least, and we wanted to see if we're going to see any kind of bounce, we needed to see some kind of a follow through to the upside. We never saw follow through, right? So once we didn't see a follow through in the first 2 hours, what happened? We lost that first level of gap area support, right? And then that's what happened on Wednesday, right? We lost that support and then it came down, filled the gap, right? Once that gap was filled, price was not allowed to go any lower. We stayed there pretty much entire day just hanging around. So we knew yesterday that was a support when the gap got filled. We talked about on last night's video that best bet for the bears is gapping it down. Why? Because they already had to go through this gap and this gap. And a lot of times when the gap gets filled, it usually acts as support. So best bet, because they already had to go through, a couple gaps, not couple gaps, but a couple support levels to break below it. So they worked really hard on Tuesday and Wednesday to do that. And so if they want to continue with that downside momentum, because a lot of times when the gap gets filled, especially when you're in an uptrend, overall uptrend, a lot of times when the gap gets filled, it could act as pretty, decent support. So best bet for the bears is just gapping it down so you don't even have to deal with that support, right? I like to call that as jumping over the fence. And it did that. We gapped down. But you see, after 1% gap down, it is no coincidence that we found support at this gap area here. There's a gap here. You see, there's this gap back in October 8th. And that's where gap opened up. I mean, that's where gap started, and that's where gap opened on that day. It is no coincidence. It did not go any lower. Again, Tuesday, we saw downturn. It did not go any lower than the gap area. Wednesday, we broke below it, right? Gap got filled. We did not go any lower below that area for that day. Thursday, today, we see a gap down, 1% gap down. That's a pretty sizable gap down at open, right? Again, market does not go any lower than the gap area support. This time though, I think what happened was bears got tired. We talked about that yesterday. Bears got tired, right? You see that? Bears got tired because they went out of they pushed it hard. That might have been exhaustion gap, but they really pushed it hard to bring it down to 342-ish area. And then once the bear got tired here, similar to here and here, right? Because they pushed it hard from all the way from the top of his band, coming all the way back down to the bottom of his band. And with that, buyers took advantage. Not only that, with this gap down, what happened? There was this gap area. We talked about this yesterday, right? Didn't we? We talked about how 342 is going to be an important support level. Why? You can see that this is that pivot. When I say pivot, I mean prior resistance acting as new support. Not only that, we had this gap actually open as of yesterday. We gap below that, fill that gap right away. So not only we came down and retest that strong pivot at 342, coinciding with the gap area, not to mention my midterm moving average just residing just underneath that. And at the same time, we had this little smaller gap that just got filled. That's a lot of support there. Not to mention, bears were tired, right? So you can see with all these data that is at hand, that's a level that you're going to see pretty strong bounce there. And then we saw bounce, gap got filled. So now it is no coincidence where market could not advance any higher than where it was today, where it is today at close. We closed right on that gap area. So every single day this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, open till close, market moved in between these levels that we've been talking about this entire week. Respecting the gap area, respecting the gap support area, respecting the pivot area, bouncing, right? You can see right here, this is first time we saw whole day bullish day. Obviously, I mean, it wasn't a bullish day because we gapped down, but we bulls marched higher all throughout the day. And that's the first time we saw this movement since this thing was falling back, since it hit 352 there. And that all happened because the oscillator was telling us that bears are tired, bulls are taking advantage of it when we saw that cross. So as of today, as of now, as of this moment, with the data that is at hand, because gap just got filled, and technically speaking, because we're still in the short term of things, short to micro term, we're still cultivating lower highs and lower lows as of today, despite the fact that we did see pretty nice bounce and nice movement throughout the entire day as the market rallied to the upside, marched higher all day long. I still have to give this market short-term neutral, not fully bullish. When would I give it bullish? Once I start to see some kind of a higher low and higher high and seeing my short-term moving average doing something like that. You see that light blue wiggly line here? It's still declining, so that's kind of telling us still there's some bearish selling pressure there. So we did see some good March today. Buyers really need to see a follow through. Same thing I said yesterday for the bears, right? I talked about how bears, the best case for the bears is gapping it down because we just fill that gap. Same logic applies here. Same logic applies here. Gap just got filled. This down gap just got filled. So I'm going to say the same thing that I told bears yesterday. Buyers need to gap it up. That will be the best bet because we just filled that gap. When the gap gets filled, it's going to act as instant resistance. So we're right on that fence. If we start to fizzle here, there might be a good chance we're coming back down to retest this low here. So we got that momentum. Bears got tired. Bulls took advantage of that. But the gap just got filled. Best case scenario is for the buyers to gap it up tomorrow. Nice, decent sized gap up, like 350 or something like that. That might do the trick. If not, if they're going to just trying to go for it to push it up without gapping it up, they must stay up for the first hour and then second hour. Until the second hour, it needs to stay above 348.50 or something like that until the full second hour. If he failed to do that, kind of like here, where bulls make a run for it, that's the first hour on that day. I think that was a Tuesday or Wednesday. That was a Wednesday. And then that was the second hour, first hour. That's Wednesday, second hour. And then you see third hour, we puked. Because on the 2 hours at open was not able to see that traction to the upside. So we're right on that resistance. Just don't even worry about the best case, just clean move to the upside because we just filled that gap would be a gap up for the buyers. Or first 2 hours staying up above my short-term moving average, then if we can stay above and end the day tomorrow, Friday, above about 349, that will be bullish going into Monday. So we do have some nice momentum in the micro term that bulls have built. This is strong support that we talked about yesterday, that 342-ish area. We do have the oscillator crust up, giving us that bullish momentum. They just need a follow-through because one day doesn't, establish an uptrend, right? Nice move, but just one more. Just buyers need just one more move. If we don't see that, we will see this market coming back down to retest 342 one more time to bears trying to, maybe this thing might even whipsaw or something like that. So it will be important to see how this market behave tomorrow. I'll come back for you guys tomorrow morning. I'll tweet things out if I see anything. Tomorrow's a weekend. It's a Friday night. I'll do the market update analysis. We'll do a little bit more comprehensive. We'll look at daily chart. We'll look at other indices, gold, Bitcoin. If I have time, I might look at some stocks, maybe Apple or something like that. But we'll see. You guys enjoy your evening and good luck trading tomorrow.